In this video, we'll give you the top waiver wire players at Target going into week 3, along with our top reactions to week 2. I'm Jim Coventry, and I'm joined by Anthony Cervino of RotoWire. Anthony, let's just do a quick injury reset here. Isaiah Pacheco broke his fibula, fracture broke, same thing. IR for sure. Timetable will be announced fairly soon on this. We'll talk about waiver wires with these players, so I'll just kind of do a reset here. Justin Jefferson, contusion to his quadriceps. Jefferson said he expects to play as soon as next week. Cooper Kupp injured his foot, left the stadium in a boot. Taysom Hill evaluated at a hospital for a chest injury. Marshawn Lloyd injured his ankle. That didn't take long. Tyjae Spears suffers an ankle injury, couldn't finish the game. And Tank Bigsby injured his shoulder and didn't even see him on the field yesterday, so not sure what happened there. That's the injury reset. Let's go right to waivers, Anthony. Malik Willis, he wasn't a disaster for the Packers against the Colts. He threw a touchdown pass, ran for 41 yards. If you're in a 2-quarterback league, emergency option on the table. Quick thoughts on Willis?
I mean, Willis played better than I thought, but I think this is more of a testament to LaFleur than Malik Willis. This would be like Malik Willis would be a super flex ad, if anything, as a QB3.
That's it. Skylar Thompson could make starts. We don't know Tua Tagovailoa's situation with a concussion. We pray for the young man's recovery and hope that he is very healthy, lives a long, healthy life. But that said, we don't know what to expect. We think he'll miss time as of right now. Skylar Thompson, he's not a good quarterback, but he does have Tyreek Hill. He does have Jalen Waddle. If Coach Mike McDaniel figures a way just to get the ball out of his hands quickly, Thompson could be a 2-quarterback league option. Thoughts, Anthony?
Yeah, you know, I don't put a lot of weight into what we saw on Thursday Night Football. The field looks slippery. Skylar Thompson was probably not expecting to play. So maybe with preparation with the first team, and obviously we know Mike McDaniel coming from that Shanahan coaching tree, he'll scheme his guys into good situations. So yeah, maybe if you want to add him, again, same as Malik Willis, as an emergency option in super flex leagues.
Thanks for the shout out, Jamie. Glad to see you're in the house. Running backs. So we did say earlier in the show that Isaiah Pacheco has a broken fibula. We know IR is very, very likely, could miss more time. We don't know the exact extent. Imaging will come out on, which we're recording today, Monday. It'll come out a little bit later. As of today, Samaje Perine and Carson Steele would share the backfield duties. I would think that Perine sees receiving duties and some rushing work. Carson Steele is viewed by the team as a fullback. He would get some rushing attempts as well. I would almost put the workload in my mind at Perine 60% to 40% for Steele, but I wouldn't discount them adding somebody this week. What are your thoughts on the Chiefs backfield, Anthony?
You know, the Chiefs backfield, you got to remember, CEH is still on the team, but he was placed on either the PUP or IR for the mental health. I think it was a PTSD they were saying. So he's still there, but I agree with you. I see the Kansas City Chiefs adding somebody. Perine actually saw the fewest snaps last week with 13. Steele had 18, and Perine only had 1 touch, while Carson Steele saw 7 carries for 24 yards. But, you know, as a receiver out of the backfield, if you're in PPR, I might prioritize Perine. But for early down work, I see Carson Steele kind of being that goal line back and early down back. So we're looking at a true split unless Kansas City adds somebody.
Yeah, and the Clyde Edwards-Helaire thing, I mean, when they're telling me PTSD, non-football injury, in my mind, his situation, I have no idea, makes it so the young man just can't get on the field. And it's not like a matter of, all right, I'm going to go now because Pacheco's out. In my mind, this sounds like it's a very serious matter. I don't know, not in the house there, but that for him to be on that list and deactivated because of it, it's probably something way more than we know, but that's speculation. Got nothing else on that. Deontay Foreman gets 14 carries after seeing 0 touches last week. Now, Foreman averaged 3 yards per carry, but I will say Jacksonville has been nasty against the run. The Dolphins couldn't run on them. It was Mostert and Achane were like 2 yards per carry. So the fact that Foreman had 3 yards per carry, I'm not discouraged by that. And if Cleveland wants to win with a ball control offense and a strong defense, Foreman needs to be part of that equation with Jerome Ford getting some work and then definitely passing down work until Nick Chubb, assuming he returns at some point. Thoughts on Foreman?
Yeah, and Donta Foreman should have already been added, despite not seeing a lot of action. They did release him. I think it was more of a roster and cap move, and signed him right back going into the season. He profiles to me more as that early down runner, that Nick Chubb role. So until Chubb returns, Foreman, if he's getting this type of usage, should be in fantasy lineups. Jacksonville, what their defense does do well is defend the run. In softer matchup, I think Donta Foreman has some fantasy upside in the flex spot.
100% that. Braylon Allen scores 2 touchdowns against the Titans, 1 through the air, 1 on the ground. I want to point this out, though. Breece Hall was riding the stationary bike on a couple of points in time during that game. I wonder if Hall was dealing with working through something and on a short week as well. Allen did score the touchdowns that could give him opportunity to get in, but Breece Hall is so the guy there. And I wonder if this was just Breece Hall was dealing with something. We're going to find out, but thoughts on Braylon Allen?
I mean, Braylon Allen looked apart. He had a lot of off-season hype. And, last week, 7 carries, 33 and a touchdown, 2 of 4 targets for 23 and a touchdown. I am not anticipating a workload split whatsoever, but I didn't watch the full feed of the game. I watched Red Zone. The Cowboys were on. So I missed the whole stationary bike. It could be, cramping, but it was enough to take Breece off the field and get this rookie in there. I view Braylon Allen more of a handcuff. And I can't trust him in a fantasy lineup until I see more consistent usage, because in week 1, he only saw 2 touches.
Yeah, and I think people are going to overreact to this because of the stat line and the touchdowns. I really do. And I could be wrong. Take your shot on Allen if you need to. If he's rostered in a lot of leagues, but if he's not, just remember the stationary bike was a thing, and Hall did not look like he was 100% for a while in that game. Bucky Irving now has 16 carries over 2 games. He could be working his way to a regular rotation role for the Buccaneers. Again, Rachaad White simply cannot run between the tackles. He's a very good receiver, but that said, Irving has looked better as an interior runner. Is he going to get more work?
I thought Bucky Irving should have been seeing more work after what he did in week 1. Now week 2, we see Rachaad White deal with a little bit of a groin injury, and we know Bucky Irving is the more efficient runner. Wasn't the greatest matchup in the world against the Detroit Lions. Was kind of an ugly, unexpected football game with the Buccaneers coming out with the win. But if Bucky Irving is available on your waiver wire, he needs to be a top priority, especially now with this potential groin issue.
Antonio Gibson of the New England Patriots has 7 and 11 carries in his 2 games with the team. If Stevenson misses time, Gibson could see a major role. Gibson broke up a 45-yard run to give him a 96-yard rushing day, which was out. And hey, the big run is part of his game. He is a dynamic runner, so you can't just say take that run out. You can't do that because he, especially as a change of pace to Stevenson, where Stevenson is a true hammer. So Gibson, again, not enough work to be like very reliable, but if you're in a deeper league and you need a flex, you might consider him. Thoughts on Gibson?
Yeah, Antonio Gibson, we know what he does best. That's a receiver out of the backfield. And this New England Patriots offense, it's flashing a little bit, but it is still what it is, especially with Jacoby Brissett. And eventually when Drake May takes over, I think this could be a very running back dominant backfield. And should Ramondre Stevenson miss time, you got to remember, he only played 1 healthy season. Last year in his rookie year, he only played in 12 games. This opens up a significant workload opportunity for Gibson. So I view Gibson as a must-add, as a player who is not only a handcuff, but with some potential PPR upside on a week-to-week basis.
Jamal Williams of the New Orleans Saints is averaging 9.5 carries. Now they've won in 2 blowout games. That could be part of the reason he's seen the work, but he is the number 2. Alvin Kamara can't get all the work. He's 29. Their whole offense looks great right now. Jamal Williams does not look bad. So if Kamara were to miss time as the version of Jamal Williams right now, he could be decent. Thoughts?
Yeah, this Saints offense is surprising me. It's surprising, I think, everybody. And the way they're running the football through the first 2 games, they have gashed their opponents, the Panthers, the Cowboys. And we know Alvin Kamara is aging, despite the fact that he's still explosive and elusive. I do see Jamal Williams maintaining a role as long as he's healthy. And even when Kendre Miller comes back, we know what the head coach thinks of him. I think if there's a role for Jamal Williams in terms of fantasy as well. He doesn't catch a lot of passes, so he might be touchdown needy. But again, if you are in a bind with all of these running back injuries, Jamal Williams is a high floor option.
If you enjoy videos like this, please consider hitting the like button and subscribe to the RotoWire Fantasy Football channel on YouTube. Also, you can check out all of our fantasy football content and rankings. You can get a free 2-day trial with no credit card needed. Head on over to rotowire.com/Jim. Check out all the RotoWire content. Wide receiver. Anthony Alec Pierce, in my mind, may have done enough in 2 weeks to hold off Adonai Mitchell for the number 3 receiver role as Josh Downs gets ready, comes back. Downs was a game-time decision. He did practice in full on Friday. My guess is he's a full go this week, Josh Downs, from that high ankle sprain. And now it comes down to you got Pittman, you got Downs, who's left. And Adonai Mitchell, look, he was drafted with the 50th pick of the draft. He's very talented. But Alec Pierce has now scored touchdowns, and he's had big plays with Anthony Richardson. My guess is, chemistry-wise, as a coaching staff, I probably don't want to take Alec Pierce out of there because that is going well for them. What are your thoughts on Alec Pierce?
After week 1, I thought it was an anomaly. Now, after 2 games, Alec Pierce is carving out a full-time role in this offense, not only in week 1, but also this past week against Green Bay. Team high reception and receiving yards, scored another touchdown, tied for the team lead in targets with 7. He also, this is significant to me, outsnapped Michael Pittman 50-45, while Adonai Mitchell 30, Ashton Doolin 24. So it seems like the top 2 receivers in this offense after the first 2 games are Pierce and Pittman. And Pierce looks like the guy you want to put in your fantasy lineups, while Michael Pittman is setting off panic meters.
No question about that. Quentin Johnson of the Chargers is next. Look, he bust last year, no question. 38 yards in week 1. We all kind of giggled, said, yeah, whatever. Well, 51 yards and 2 touchdowns. And this is a game the Chargers barely threw the ball. They took their foot completely off the gas in the second half. Johnson could have had a lot more. His touchdown was really impressive. He was locked up with J.C. Horn. Great throw by Justin Herbert. He made a nice move in the end zone to get to the ball. Former first-round pick. Is he worth a shot?
Yeah, you have to add him, right? Because last year, obvious disaster, and he's barely on any fantasy rosters. But in week 1, he did see 5 targets, 3 for 38. And this past week, only 6 targets, but also hauling into 2 touchdowns, 5 receptions, 51 yards. Now, this is a low-volume passing attack, but it is important to note, and maybe it's because Palmer was a little bit banged up, but Quentin Johnston, 81 snaps, by far leading the team in snap share over Palmer with 70 and Ladd McConkey 67. So, he needs to be added when you're getting this much opportunity.
Demarcus Robinson of the Rams has a great floor play. Go back to last year. 6 of 7 games, he had at least 44 yards. The game he didn't, it was week 18. They had nothing to play for. He had a 0 in that game. A lot of players sat out. So basically every meaningful game he's had that. And this year, a 42 and a 50. So he has been very consistent for his last 8 games with the Rams. Nakua is going to be out a while. Cooper Kupp left week 2 with a boot. Robinson's going to maintain that high floor. I don't know what the ceiling is. He does score an occasional touchdown, which could help as well. Thoughts on Demarcus Robinson?
This past game against Arizona was an utter disaster between injuries, the way Arizona popped and really put this game away. Matthew Stafford looks a little bit off. I don't know if he's dealing with something we don't know about. The offensive line is all banged up. But when it comes to the new top receiver in this offense, it is Demarcus Robinson. We can talk about Tyler Johnson too, but when it comes to, domination and snaps, Demarcus Robinson now leads the team in snaps through these injury weeks. Tyler Johnson, if we're taking out Kupp and Nakua, with 94. So these 2 guys seems to be the ones you want to target. But Robinson, only 4 targets, but caught 2 of them for 50 yards. I expect this offense to get back on track. I quite frankly think that the Rams offensive attack just got punched in the mouth by an Arizona defense. It will get on track. McVay will figure it out.
We'll talk about the Rams a little later in the show specifically. We may have a little differing thoughts on that, but we'll definitely talk about that in a bit. Jalen Tolbert was targeted 9 times, and he posted 82 receiving yards. Now, a lot of that was Dallas was losing in a blowout. There was a downfield pass that Tolbert converted. Nice play. Battled with a defender. Made nice inside move to make the catch. Tolbert is the clear number 3 for the Cowboys, so he'll be on the field. If the Dallas defense continues to give up points, Tolbert may be needed for a consistent role in the offense. Thoughts?
Yeah, Tolbert had a lot of this offseason to work out with Dak Prescott. Remember, Cooks missed some training camp and preseason time. We know CD Lamb wasn't there. So, Tolbert was probably working as a number one receiver in this offense, and it is starting to show. One of those catches, nice stat line, but one of those catches was outstanding. And Tolbert, I think there's a reason why Dallas didn't pursue another receiver. Maybe they see something in him, and, you got the proverbial third-year breakout hanging over his head. So, with 9 targets, I think Jalen Tolbert is a solid add in deeper leagues. And again, we know there's no running game here. They're going to throw a lot. So there is enough opportunity to go around between the top 4 pass catchers on this offense.
Rashad Bateman of the Ravens, he may not have much upside, but he has at least 40 yards in each game. He has 4 and 5 targets. He's a depth option. Thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, you also have to contend with Isaiah Likely. Obviously came back down to earth, but he's going to be on the field as well. Bateman is the type of, he's a big play guy. And I feel like if he does not score the occasional touchdown, I don't know how we can use him as a reliable fantasy option in 12-team leagues.
Yeah, just a depth guy. That's it. And Josh Reynolds, another depth guy, Denver Broncos, 45 yards in week 1. He had 80 against the Steelers. Downfield play worked out for him, but it's tough to recommend any Denver components of the passing attack. But Reynolds is a big part of their receiver rotation, and he'll get the lesser coverage compared to Cortland Sutton. Anthony, just a depth option here.
Yeah, you can't trust anything going on in Denver right now when it comes to throwing the football.
Yeah. No, it's terrible. Last one, Jalen Naylor of the Minnesota Vikings. Strong training camp, scored in each of the first 2 games. Now, Jordan Addison obviously missed time in week 1, missed week 2 completely. Justin Jefferson was out for a while yesterday. I do think when Jefferson and Addison are on the field, there might not be a whole lot to go around in Naylor, but Naylor has been impressive so far. Bench stash?
It's certainly bench stash because we also know we have that possible suspension looming for Jordan Addison, and Naylor has been impressive. Back-to-back games, as you said, with the touchdown, a little bit, only 4 targets, tough matchup. I think if you are in a bind, because like we said, all the running back injuries, the receiver injuries, you might have to use a guy like Naylor in your fantasy lineups.
All right, Anthony, tight end, your guy, Mike Gesicki, he drops a touchdown in week 1, but he comes back. He completely led the Bengals pass catchers, blew away everybody, including Jamar Chase, 7 catches for 91 yards. As we've said all preseason, since he needs a middle-of-the-field presence, Gesicki may be what Burrow needs. Thoughts?
Yeah, this was a coming out party for Gesicki. And even in week 1, he had that touchdown called back, but was still targeted 4 times, ran 15 routes, and played in 20 or played in 17 snaps, while Drew Sample led the tight ends in snaps in week 1. This past week, Sample still had 31, probably because he's a superior blocker, and that's not what Gesicki does well. But Gesicki did play in 29, which was a season high. They could play him in that big slot role, and he was extremely dominant. And I think Gesicki is a must-add. Every year there's always that back-end tight end who goes undrafted, and he's free on the waiver wire, and he ends up being a league winner. I think that could be Gesicki because there is a need for ancillary receiving options for Cincinnati.
Anthony, I got lucky on this one. He had a lot of start-sit questions with Hunter Henry, and I was banging the drum for him. I go, Hunter Henry's a great play this week. He's a great play this week. I didn't see 8 of 12 targets caught for 109 yards. I didn't see that coming. I thought he'd have a good game, not that game. Now, in the opener, Hunter Henry was outplayed statistically by Austin Hooper. That was a bit of a problem. Hunter Henry can still play. Last year, the offense was a disaster. It wasn't Henry's fault. Henry had a number of good games, but that was with a terrible team. Jacoby Brissett can get the ball to Henry, especially when the matchup is decent. Henry's not going to get 100 yards every week, but how many tight ends could do that, what he actually did in that game? Henry's a solid top 15 tight end, in my opinion. Thoughts?
Yeah, when you look at this passing attack for New England, I always was in on Hunter Henry coming into this year, one of the better fantasy values that nobody was really talking about at the tight end position. They're still figuring out receiver. Polk looked good. Osborne gets a lot of snaps, but he's really a good blocker. When it comes to that reliable, pass catching threat, that possession receiver, that is Hunter Henry. And whether it's Drake May eventually or Jacoby Brissett, they're going to lean on Hunter Henry.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Jonnu Smith, quiet in week 1, but he goes 6 for 53 last week. If you lack a quality tight end, look, Mike McDaniel said he wanted to get Smith involved in the offense. Now with Skylar Thompson, it might be a lot of get it out quick, get it out quick. Smith is very athletic. Is he worth an ad?
I would say so, especially now with the uncertainty at quarterback with Skylar Thompson. We could see a lot more, short yardage checkdowns going in Jonnu Smith's direction just because we don't know. I'm not going to trust Skylar Thompson to sit in the pocket and take the hit and try to get the ball downfield to these receivers.
Last one, and I don't know the truth about Jake Ferguson. I don't know if it really was, he was a real game time decision. I don't know if he's close or he's the other week or two, but if he's going to miss any more time, look, Dak Prescott has never met a tight end he didn't like. Luke Schoonmaker, 6 catches, 43 yards. If Ferguson misses, any Dak Prescott starting tight end has value. Thoughts?
Yeah, I'm with you there. And I almost picked him up and started him this weekend, the FFPC, which is tight end premium myself, but I had Gesicki everywhere. But yeah, you said it right. No matter who the tight end is through the years for Dak Prescott, they have value in fantasy football. And moving forward, if Ferguson misses time, you could legitimately use Schoonmaker.
All right, we are getting to our reactions of week 2. The Saints offense embarrasses the Dallas defense. I was stunned, Anthony, because I got it when the Saints beat Carolina. I got it. Carolina's terrible. So fine. I thought for sure it would be Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence sitting in Carr's lap all day long. And when Derek Carr's under pressure, he is doomed. But what did we see? We saw play action. We saw rollouts and we saw screens. Derek Carr was under zero pressure. He didn't throw a lot of passes. He didn't have to. They stormed the Cowboys. Clint Kubiak, I went over this all offseason. I wasn't touting Carr as the next best thing, but I did say 38 pass attempts under play action. Last year, Carr was the #1 quarterback in the NFL at play action. Tiny sample. But we know back in his career, when he has time, he can play the quarterback position. It's just when he's under pressure, he's a disaster. From what I saw yesterday, I don't know that anytime soon Derek Carr is going to be under pressure. And if that is the case, he can make a push for the top 20-ish quarterbacks as opposed to the top 28 where he was kind of universally seen. Let's start with Derek Carr. He was clean. What do you think about him so far?
I mean, if we go back to week 15 of last season, which is what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games, he's given us over 20 fantasy points in 5 of those games. So this isn't new. Derek Carr started gelling, the last few games of last season. We're starting to see it pop already this year. 82% of his passes in week 1, 68.8 this past week. He only threw 16 passes, 15.2 yards per attempt. Like, this is Derek Carr. If this is what we're going to see from him, because we know Derek Carr's a good quarterback. He's the butt of a lot of jokes, but they have weapons, they have speed, and they have the right OC with Kubiak. This Saints offense might be for real. And especially like Rashid Shaheed, he's the ultimate. They had him in the backfield taking running back carries yesterday.
Yeah, Shaheed had 4 targets. He had 5 in week 1. He had 3 carries, like you said, as well. 2 big plays in 2 weeks, found the end zone. Chris Olave was less than a yard away from finding the end zone. He literally is inches. He just missed scoring a touchdown. That would have made his fantasy day, because 4 for 81 on 6 targets is fine. You throw a touchdown in there, and all of a sudden now you're looking at an 18-point PPR day as opposed to a 12. So Chris Olave is just fine. But the fact that they have won so handily in their 2 games, they have not needed to pass. Derek Carr attempted 23 passes in week 1, 16 yesterday. Alvin Kamara, through 2 weeks, I could not have been more wrong about him. And I'm going to explain this. Look, I think Alvin Kamara, he still isn't going to break many tackles. He still isn't going to get a lot of yards after contact. Nobody's contacting him. This offense with Clint Kubiak, their offensive line is a disaster. It doesn't matter. The way this is schemed up right now, you just see open chasms of space. Alvin Kamara can definitely take care of that, because you don't have to break tackles and you don't have to, get yards after contact. He is tearing it up. 4 touchdowns yesterday, a touchdown in the opener. He had 6 yards per carry almost in the opener, a little less than that. 20 for $115. Had a screen pass he took for a long, long way, so 65 receiving yards. Right now, Alvin Kamara, until further notice, running back 1. Anthony, what do you think?
Yeah, I couldn't have been more wrong about a team or a player. than I was about Alvin Kamara, but like through 2 games, and I get it, it's only 2 games, and he's 29, so he's fresh right now. Maybe he runs out of gas mid-season towards the end of the season, but right now you absolutely have to lock him into your starting fantasy football lineups. Like, there is no question. I would say like he's matchup proof right now until further notice. And he gets Philly next week. Philly, they're not great against the run either. They were kind of gashed by Josh Jacobs in the second half of that Sao Paulo game.
All right, reaction number 2. Marvin Harrison, Malik Nabers, their rookie coming out parties. It was a fun day of fantasy football. So first of all, start with Marvin Harrison. Harrison got it all done early. Remember the opening day, though? 1 catch for 4 yards. Well, he was 4 for $130 and 2 touchdowns, 8 targets. If the Cardinals were not having so much fun blowing out the Rams, Harrison would have had a probably much, much bigger day than that. So, but you'll take that. Massive breakout performance. Kyler Murray, perfect passer rating, throws for 266 and 3 touchdowns, 21 attempts, because again, they were storming off the Rams. Murray runs for 59 yards. Marvin Harrison on the map. Thoughts?
Yeah, I was telling everybody, don't panic about these rookies, especially Marvin Harrison, because they got Buffalo. And I think we have to, pay attention to the Buffalo Bills a little bit. Not only did they erase Kyler and Harrison, but even when Tua was in the game on Thursday Night Football, they were non-existent. So maybe Buffalo's secondary, despite the turnover and personnel, is better than we think. But this Rams team, right? Like I was telling people, you start Marvin. They were a big play waiting to happen anytime Jameson Williams touched the ball in week 1. And their best secondary piece in terms of cornerback, Darius Williams, was placed on IR going into the season. Like I think this is going to be the Marvin Harrison coming out party, and it was a first quarter coming out party.
Exactly, because again, they didn't need him after that. And meanwhile, and I know this about the rookies, but I always got to talk James Conner when he's tearing it up. And 21 for $122 touchdown. He fumbled another one that Trey McBride picked up in the end zone to get his touchdown. Conner, you get 2 touchdowns for us. That's all right. But James Conner is a beast. And so I think you were with me on this in the preseason. I was saying, don't be surprised if the Cardinals are a top 5 offense this season. Yes. And what we saw in week 2, and I know it was the Rams, and I know the Rams have plenty of injuries and problems, but man, this offense could be fun. Anything there, Anthony?
No, I was absolutely with you. I was saying this is going to be a deceptively good offense, especially this defense is kind of questionable, and they're going to have to score points. I mean, it didn't look questionable yesterday, but I do think the defense comes down to earth, which means there's going to be a lot of shootouts. And while Kyler's healthy, they have the personnel to stick into shootouts.
Man, Kyler runs for 59 yards in that game. Oh, he looks so good right now. Get him as the quarterback 7. We were in on that. Go ahead.
I was going to say the significant thing, especially like I remember like Aaron Donald used to pester Kyler Murray. No more Aaron Donald. Kyler did what he wanted. And I think that Aaron Donald retirement really crippled this defense.
There's no question about that. All right, Malik Nabers has to get his moment here. Nabers in the opener was good. 5 catches, 66 yards, 7 targets, played every snap. And in that game, though, I thought Wan'Dale Robinson would have, the better day. It was close between the two, but the targets, Robinson had 12. Why? I said, because in that opener, it was Minnesota was going to send the blitz. And even if it didn't get home, Daniel Jones was going to freak out and give it to the slot guy, just get it out. Well, we knew with Washington, there would be no pass rush. And we know with Washington, there are no cornerbacks. Benjamin St-Juste, good luck. And so realistically, no problem. So Daniel Jones throws 28 passes. 18 of those go to Nabers, catches a little more than half, 10 of them. But 127 yards and a touchdown. Now, it's a little bit troubling that Daniel Jones could only get 10 of those 18 passes to Nabers completed, but we saw it. Nabers is an absolute beast.
Yeah, I was telling people, if there's a game that's going to be the breakout for Nabers, it's going to be against Washington after what the top 3 Tampa receivers did. I think just under 200 yards combined, 4 total touchdowns, 14 receptions in the season opener. They can't stop anybody. And the only person that's going to stop Malik Nabers in that Washington week 2 matchup was Daniel Jones. So Daniel Jones, he got the job done good enough for Malik Nabers and Wan'Dale Robinson to get going.
Reaction number 3. Are the Rams cooked? And it's not just the injuries, Anthony. The Nakua is out probably to 5 to 7 weeks. Cooper Kupp was in a boot after the game. But that offensive line over the years, they're hit or miss. These are some players that have had wild career splits. Rob Havenstein, some years he's really good, some years he's really terrible. We've seen it now. They're getting Alaric Jackson back from suspension, fine enough, but it's not like he's going to be a world beater. He could be, but he's not necessarily. Steve Avila's on the IR. He's going to miss significant time. If McVay does not have his offensive line, he's a great genius as a coach, but his best seasons have come when the line has played well. And you're already seeing it. Last year, they could run downhill. And remember, they just crippled Arizona on the ground last year. Kyren Williams, 12 for 25. In the opener against Detroit, 18 for 50. Well, Kyren Williams doesn't have that great interior line just mauling people downhill. And all of a sudden, Kyren Williams looks like what we thought Kyren Williams was 2 years ago. Now he's seeing snaps. So there's that. He's getting a short touchdown each week. So there's that. But if this Rams offense is going to be without Kupp as well, they might not be on the 1 yard line 2 games in a row. And if those touchdowns dry up, what do you have left with Kyren Williams? I mean, he had 3 catches for 4 yards in the opener. He had 4 catches for 27, a little better last week. But overall, without those touchdowns, it could be really scary for a person who's getting all this work, but the investment was running back 7. First of all, thoughts on Kyren Williams?
Number one, I get what you're saying, but what I also think about is, can we see the type of workload that Achan's going to get? Because Achan, without Tua, and when that offense was kind of defunct, he was seeing a lot of extra work as a receiver. I think we could potentially see that from Kyren Williams because they have all of these receiver injuries, and there could be additional checkdowns from Matthew Stafford, which could be a result of this line being bad. So I think Kyren and consequently Achan on the other side, I think they're both going to be fine.
But just remember, he's about 4 yards per reception this year, Kyren Williams. So if you could catch passes and you're getting 4 yards per reception, it's not going to go very far, especially if defenses don't have to worry about, and there's no downfield passing attack. It's all schemed up. Yeah. And if those guys are out, defense is going to walk everybody up because they have nothing to worry about. Matthew Stafford can't beat you if he doesn't have receivers to beat you. So we'll see what happens. If you're box score hunting, you saw Blake Corum had 8 carries. Garbage time. Game was over. Yeah. Bronny Rivers was a little bit in early, didn't see much, but it was not Blake Corum mixing in. It was game over, put him in. Anything there?
I think if you drafted Corum, you drafted him as a true handcuff. And, we also drafted Corum with the belief that, hey, he's going to be a true handcuff to a player on one of the best offenses in football. Right now, I'm not saying you can't drop Corum because I think we invested too much into him, but we can't use him. We can't think about it yet.
Yeah, no, not even close. And again, in my mind, do not be surprised if this offensive line is as bad as it looks. We are going to have an implosion by the runs because Matthew Stafford, he needs to be protected. He is not a quarterback that's going to buy time. He's very much predicated on the timing and rhythm of the offense. And if your line isn't doing their job, that is not going to be there. This is very delicate right now in terms of how they're going to look. All right, reaction number 4. What is going on with the tight ends this season? So many people were amped up about them. Travis Kelce, week 1, 3 for 34. Okay, it's got to get better. Nope, 1 catch for 5 yards, and he's playing 90% of the snaps. Sam Laporta, 4 for 45 in the opener, decent. 2 for 13 last week. Jamison Williams is their number 2. Laporta is no longer the number 2 option there. I guess let's just start there. Kelce and Laporta. Are these going to end up being wasted draft picks?
I think there is hope for Travis Kelce because, especially without Pacheco, there's going to be a need for an additional playmaker. And we know who that reliable playmaker is. I think in theory, maybe, they wanted to, let's preserve Kelce for a Super Bowl run and try to get these other options involved. But now you have this big hole at running back, and we know who the option is going to be. Probably in the middle of the field is going to be Travis Kelce. But when we talk about Laporta, I was very in on Kelce, very out on Laporta. And it looks like at least early on, we both were right on Laporta with the fact that Jamison Williams is popping. I think Gibbs had a bunch of targets yesterday. Amon-Ra St. Brown had, I think, over 15 or 17 targets, and Laporta's feeling the brunt of it.
Dalton Kincaid and Mark Andrews a little bit similar. In the opener, Kincaid goes 1 for 11, Andrews 2 for 14. They both did a little better last week, or this week. Kincaid 4 for 33, Andrews 4 for 51. Certainly not the numbers you wanted out of them. So again, both of these have been disappointments for 2 weeks. How about Kincaid and Andrews?
Kincaid was off to a nice start, and I think he got a little bit banged up early in that game. And by the time he came back in, Josh Allen and company blew that matchup open. When they you would think they're going to have to start throwing the ball at some point. They're not going to be able to be this run dominant and defensive dominant. And when they do, I think Kincaid's going to be fine.
So Evan Ingram, 1 catch for 5 yards in the opener, 4 targets, a mysterious pregame injury, and he gets ruled out after the inactive lists come out. That can't be held against him in any way, but it wasn't looking good before. And the Jacksonville passing game, to me, looks a little bit nightmarish. I believe it's the coaching, but Trevor Lawrence now for a year and 2 games has just simply not been good. Will Ingram have any chance to do much damage?
This offense did thrive the first 2 years he's been in Jacksonville when Evan Ingram has been involved. But this year, you hammered Press Taylor all offseason, and coming out of the gate, I don't think Trevor Lawrence has played this bad since Urban Meyer. And he has weapons. Christian Kirk, he is invisible right now.
Yes.
I don't know what's going on. Is it, and maybe you can, is it the fact that they are trying to get Bigsby more involved and taking ETN off the field? Is that making that much of a difference? Because that's the only thing that seems to be different this year, is that they're trying to get these other backs involved and taking ETN off the field. I
think they're trying some things. I think they're trying to throw the ball more to the perimeter. But the problem is, really, Kirk and Ingram are your 2 best players. Yeah. I get it. They got Brian Thompson. That kid's a first-round pick, whatever. He's fine. But Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram could do real damage. Remember, the league continues. I checked it week 1. We're still at a 73% zone rate. You attack these seams in the zone to great success. And again, they're trying different things, but it's not really looking great. Now, there are a few tight ends who are doing okay. Trey McBride had 5 for 30 in the opener, but he was targeted 9 times. 6 for 67. He recovered a fumble in the end zone. McBride's fine. Kittle's fine. 4 for 40 in the opener. Comes back with a 7 for 76 and a touchdown. He was taken off on a cart, but it wasn't an injury. It was like dehydration, cramping, something like that. So he was fine. Brock Bowers, my goodness, 6 for 58. Follows it up with a 9 for 98 against Baltimore, what you thought would be a death matchup. Bowers is the clear number 2 receiver in this offense after Devontae Adams. We'll probably just talk about Bowers for a minute here. Bowers will keep this going or not so much?
Listen, I wasn't very high on any of these Raiders, especially Bowers, because of the quarterback situation. But maybe the quarterback situation is going to favor Bowers, because who knows how often Minshew, like he got Devontae Adams involved finally yesterday. But I think when it comes to a week-to-week basis, he has that check down option in Brock Bowers, who right now I think is a top 5 or 3 tight end. So we have to ride the wave.
Reaction number 5. The Jets may be in some real trouble over the long haul here. They did win, but Tennessee, in my mind, maybe Tennessee's way better than I thought, but the Jets, I thought, even though they're on the road and on a short week, I thought they should have been able to handle this team. Now, they got the win. Give them that. But Aaron Rodgers, 167 passing yards in the opener. I know he didn't finish. Tyrod Taylor come in. Only 176 yards against Tennessee. And they really needed him. There were times they needed to pass the ball. And Garrett Wilson is not getting unlucky. He had a good first drive or 2 against San Francisco 2 weeks ago, 6 for 60. He goes 4 for 57 here. So he hasn't had more than 60 yards in 2 games. We were seeing this level of production with the bad quarterbacks of last year. Let's just start there.
Listen, I was with you. I thought, okay, week 1, 49ers, tough matchup, but this game against Tennessee, we're going to see the Jets that were advertised and we expected all season long. And, give credit to Tennessee. It's now 2 games in a row. They hung in there because Will Levis, if you listen to Brian Callahan, is not a good quarterback. And they shouldn't be in these games, but they are playing tough, good football. The Jets did hang on, but you need to find a way to get Garrett Wilson more involved, because you're right. Garrett Wilson's putting up the Garrett Wilson stat lines that he was putting up with Zach Wilson and Tim Boyle. And, it's nice. Braylon Allen's like all these other guys are getting involved. You have two of the best players, young players in this league. You got to get Brees and Garrett Wilson. They need to be the stars of this offense. And Aaron Rodgers, he needs to be the guy that figures it out.
Now, the one thing I will say is the Jets added a lot of people to their offensive line. It is possible that chemistry and the lines need cohesion. It's not like all individuals doing their job. There's a lot of assignments and things you got to pass off, and a lot of those could be problematic. And so maybe facing the 49ers, and Tennessee's been good at pressure, so maybe it's something to do with that. So the one holdout for the Jets is if the line is in the process of galvanizing, that could change things. That's a work in progress, and we don't quite know how that's going to work out. Obviously, Brees Hall, clearly you drafted him like me as the first running back off the board. Some of you got him as a second or the third. Getting it done as a receiver, 6 and 8 targets, scored in each game. The rushing hasn't been like through the roof yet. I mean, good enough. 16 carries for 54 against San Francisco, 14 for 62 against Tennessee. Better days to come there, especially again if the line is going to improve. But Brees Hall, with his running, receiving, and goal line acumen, is the man. We said yesterday, Braylon Allen, after getting 2 touches in the opener, Brees Hall was on a stationary bike multiple times. I think he was dealing with some maybe cramping, maybe some tightness. And so Braylon Allen was a big factor, caught a very nice misdirection pass from Aaron Rodgers, scored on the ground as well. Allen looks really good. But again, Brees Hall, for this offense right now, the way they're struggling, if he's healthy, they need to get him all the work they can, because Brees Hall, the more work he gets, the more likely he breaks that super long run. Thoughts?
Yeah, Brees Hall should be the guy here. And I get it. He's on a stationary bike. Braylon Allen looks good, but we know Brees Hall is one of the best young running backs in the NFL. And if this Jets offense or this Jets team in general, if they really want to be a Super Bowl team and attack this window, which is why you brought Aaron Rodgers in there anyway, then you need to get Brees more touches. So again, I think you are onto something when it comes to a potential, cramping, nothing significant, but there was a reason why Brees Hall didn't get his normal workload.
Yeah, because in a game that they were close and they needed Brees Hall, he was off the field enough. So that is an important note, I do believe.
They needed to win the game. It wasn't just needed Brees Hall. They needed to win that game.
Exactly. And because it was in doubt on many occasions. So, and they ended up pulling one. We did have a question here. So Demetrios had Pacheco and wants to pick up Carson Steele or Braylon Allen from the Jets. Anthony and I talked at the beginning of the show about injury things. Carson Steele is going to be in line with Samaje Perine. We don't know if they're bringing somebody in. They view Steele as a fullback. I think he gets carries. We could get goal line. We don't know how they're going to approach us. Braylon Allen, Anthony said earlier in the show, we probably see him more as a handcuff to Brees Hall. Again, that stationary bike thing was a deal in my mind. Maybe I'm wrong. And if that was the case, it's different. But I can't see how you would sit Brees Hall down if you didn't have to, because he is probably the best running back in the league. I'm going to say he's the best running back in the league right now. McCaffrey's not in the field right now. Even McCaffrey was healthy. He's just, anyway, I think Brees Hall could be the best in the league. So all that said, who do you pick up if you're Demetrios?
I want Carson Steele, and I don't want him, right? I wish it was Pacheco there, but again, like, you have Brees Hall to contend with, and if you look at this, the snap rate, like the season opener, 41-8, last week 40-20, and if it wasn't for that stationary bike thing, maybe it's closer to 50-10. Where Carson Steele, unless they bring in a running back in Kansas City, and it would be short notice if they come in and play right away, we're looking at Carson Steele probably handling at least the early down work and goal line opportunities, while Pete Ryan's the receiver out of the backfield. And like I said, when we talked about it earlier, Pete Ryan played in fewer snaps against the Cincinnati Bengals in a game where they probably could have used this passing down work, and he only had 1 touch, where Carson Steele had 7 rushes for 24 yards. So I think that we're already seeing Carson Steele involved in this offense.
Yes. One last thing about the Jets before we move on. Tyler Conklin, he's played about 90% of the snaps. He had one catch for 6 yards on 2 targets in the opener, one catch for 10 yards on 2 targets here. With Aaron Rodgers not doing much in the passing game, knowing that Alan Lazard had 9 and 4 targets, Mike Williams saw his snap share go way up this week, although he had one catch, and Garrett Wilson there. I'm really thinking Tyler Conklin may not be worthy of being kept on rosters. Anything there?
Yeah, Conklin was being drafted sometimes over our guy Hunter Henry. And, normally through the years, Aaron Rodgers at least targeted his tight ends. It just doesn't seem like that's happening right now. We're seeing a lot of Aaron Rodgers targets, obviously, to go to Garrett Wilson. We're seeing Lazard get involved, and these running backs are getting highly involved. So I don't know if there's going to be a lot left over for Tyler Conklin. If you are in a bind and you have to pick somebody up, I think Tyler Conklin is very much droppable for somebody like Hunter Henry or Gesicki.
Couple comments before we get out of here. Hunter asked you to be worried about Laporta. Sam Laporta had 120 targets last year. He was the clear number 2 receiver in the Detroit offense. It was Amon-Ra St. Brown. It was Sam Laporta. Jamison Williams is getting about 10 targets a game right now. Yeah. He is a superstar. He is a first-round pick. In terms of talent, look, Amon-Ra St. Brown's a great slot receiver. If it's apples to apples, Jamison Williams may be an incredibly more talented player than St. Brown by 2 miles. Not that St. Brown's going to see less volume. He's going to continue to see that work because Goff loves the middle of the field. But Sam Laporta has to be the loser here because those 120 targets, many of those, not all, but many of them are going Jamison Williams' way now. They didn't have a legit number 2 last year. They had Josh Reynolds, not legitimate at all. So, Sam Laporta, that 120 targets, that could become 85, and that's a quarter of a hit to his fantasy value. Yeah. Anything there, Anthony?
No, and let's mind you here with Sam Laporta. If you were drafting Laporta, you were probably chasing his touchdowns, which is a mistake in fantasy football, as we know, because he did not top 1,000 yards. Where you had a guy like Kyle Pitts top 1,000 yards in his rookie year with that kind of a disaster of a quarterback. So that kind of told me he was more of a red zone threat. Maybe he's not as efficient as the fantasy numbers, because the fantasy numbers could be deceiving. So there were some red flags on Laporta, and now that we have this emergence of a wide receiver too, because last year they were more of a wide receiver too by committee, so much so that they traded for Donovan Peoples-Jones at the trade deadline. You have this solid, deep ball, big play threat next to Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think we're going to see these receivers continue to dominate targets. We saw St. Brown 15 or 17 last week, and we now have 9 for Jamison in week 1, 11 yesterday. And if the Lions trail, right, in games, I don't see Sam Laporta having a role at all.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. But right now I would be a little bit worried about Laporta. I think if you roster him, you could maybe sell high because some people are going to think he's going to snap back pretty quick. See what you can get offer wise, because if you could pick up someone like, you might be able to scam Brock Bowers off of somebody. You might. You never know. You could try.
Wow, yeah.
It might, because people might think Laporta's the number 1 tight end. Just try. It doesn't hurt to try. Randy. Can't get my words out of my mouth. Call him Andy. Randy's a good friend of the show here. Randy asks, how valuable is Cam Akers right now? Do you envision the vacuum between him and Pierce? So, first of all, Dameon Pierce was out with an injury, 3 for 16 in the opener. Dameon Pierce had a good camp. The coaching staff was really happy with him. Cam Akers against the Bears, 7 for 32. The numbers were real nice. Caught a 3-yard pass as well. Played 21% of the snaps. Daria Gunbawale actually played 32% of the snaps. Thought that was interesting. It's a game they were winning. So that was very, very telling. So, but Mixon, remember, Joe Mixon missed half of the snaps because he was dealing with an ankle injury. So I think right now, I do think Pierce is the number 2. But I think that even if it was like Mixon missed time, I think we're going to see Akers, Pierce, and Ogunbowale. I think it's going to be a 3-man jumble. I don't think any one of them commands work over the others. And I think Ogunbowale is the most likely receiving back out of that trio. And I think Pierce, based on the camp in his week 1, has a little bit of an upper hand on Akers. If you're in a deep league, it never hurts to stash a running back because you never know how this shakes out. I'm still surprised Akers was able to get almost 5 yards per carry coming off another Achilles injury. But that said, he did well enough. So I think anything on that, Anthony?
Well, what's significant here, and you went through his stat line. He also lost a fumble. So who knows how this coaching staff's going to respond?
Yeah, Sean,
I think that's significant, honestly.
It is. You're right. It is. Ball security is everything.
And it was a close game. So,
it was a close game.
Maybe there's a trust factor here that, hey, maybe they go harder on Pierce and Agumbawale because I think they like Akers. I think Akers is a nice back, but if the NFL if they don't trust you that you're not going to put the ball on the ground and give away the game, you're not going to get usage.
No, definitely not. Last question today. We got to get out of here. Ramiro asked, do you drop Christian Kirk? I mean, at this point, it's tough because he's Christian Kirk. He's like a 1,200 type yard receiver, 2 years running. He missed time with injury last year, so he didn't get there, but per game, he was still there. And he comes out the gate. He goes 1 for 30 in the opener of 4 targets. He plays 88% of the snaps yesterday. 1 catch. I haven't pronounced a -1 yard. I don't know if I screwed that up on my charting, but I got to recheck that if I missed. But
no,
he didn't do anything.
You're right.
Oh my gosh. So, I mean, at this point, what do you do? He's Christian Kirk, though. I think you give him 1 more week. I think you give him 1 more week. Anthony?
Listen, and I get why you would say, do we drop Christian Kirk? If you look at his first 2 games, total of 2 receptions for 29 yards. Total on 7 targets. But, when this Jacksonville offense gets right, I think it's going to get right because of Christian Kirk. Listen, Jamar Chase, not a great first 2 games either. Michael Pittman, you want to talk about players want to think about panicking on, under 7 PPR points in each of his first 2 games. And he's getting, Kirk's not getting targeted. Pittman's getting 7 and 8 targets the first 2 games. So, I think we need to, let's give it a minute to see if this Jacksonville offense can pick it up. Because eventually, Doug Peterson, he's smart. He's going to change things.
And they're 0-2. And desperation could begin to set in. And if you get desperate, you go to what you know. And Christian Kirk is what they know. Yeah. That's why I think you give him another week for sure. I said it was the last one, but Tungo Vailoa drop him for Derek Carr. I'd say yes. Derek Carr, I mean, I don't know what Tungo Vailoa's future is going to be, but I know it's dicey right now. Thoughts, Anthony?
I think if you're in a bind, you need a quarterback. I went over it earlier when we were talking about the Cowboys Saints game dating back to last year. 5 of his past 6 games over 20 quarterback points for Derek Carr. So we started cooking a little bit at the end of last season, and now we have Kubiak in the mix. This offense looks unstoppable through the first 2 games. So yeah, you pick him up because it's not only just Tua and time missed. Tua hasn't been the greatest. There's a reason why Tua was going as a 13th, 14th quarterback off the board. He puts up big numbers, big yards, but he's not a great fantasy quarterback per se, right? Am I off there?
He hasn't even 30 touchdowns in the season.
Roster. He isn't I need to have Tua.
Right. And the fact, anyway, I shouldn't even go on this, and I'm sorry that I'm doing. He should never, ever, ever, ever run the football one time ever.
He doesn't know how to protect himself.
And he ran 2 or 3 times in that game. And I'm thinking, even when he was fine, I go, what are you doing? Why are you running the ball? Yeah. Your brain is the most important thing about your body. And I don't want you to get hit, dude. And sure enough, that I was so upset with him for that. You can't run the ball, Tua. And he did. And I was so angry with him. Don't do that.
And that's not on DeMar Hamlin, right?
No, it wasn't even a violent hit.
Yeah.
And I felt so terrible for young Tua, but it's dude, you can never run. And he apparently lost weight so he could run more this year. And I'm thinking, why? You don't need to do this. Yeah. I was angry with him because I don't want him to be in that situation. Yeah, I got a little fired up about that. Sorry about that. Everybody, we appreciate you. We had a lot of people here today. We love every one of you. Keep coming back. We'll see you every Monday. Remember, RotoWire Fantasy Football YouTube. Check it out. Subscribe. Click the notifications. We got stuff all the time going on here. We got videos going on the social platforms for RotoWire. Definitely check those out. Give you all kinds of advice throughout the week. Appreciate everybody. For Anthony Cervino, I'm Jim Coventry. Go get him. Have a great day.